Thinking Beyond the Crowd by Kevin L. Whitworth. A contrarian manifesto for reasoned independence in an unthinking age. Introduction. Welcome to the mental plantation. Freedom didn't die in a revolution. It suffocated under convenience. We didn't lose our liberty to tyrants with swords. We gave it away to algorithms with personalized recommendations. We traded curiosity for comfort, skepticism for social approval, and logic for whatever the crowd was shouting loudest that day. The new slavery isn't physical, it's mental. A world where your beliefs, habits, and outrage are all preloaded like an app. You don't even have to think anymore. Netflix will choose, Amazon will suggest, Google will autocomplete your thoughts, and social media will make sure you never feel alone, as long as you agree with the mob. We call this progress. The truth is, most people don't want freedom. They want the illusion of it, the right to choose between slightly different brands of the same pre-approved lifestyle. They mistake rebellion for fashion and independent thought for arrogance. We're living in the age of permissioned thinking, where even logic needs a trigger warning. This book isn't about politics. It's not about left or right, woke or anti-woke, liberal or conservative. It's about the one thing none of them can function without: your compliance. It's about reclaiming the one form of freedom that can't be legislated, taxed, or censored: mental sovereignty. If that sounds dramatic, good. Because every system of control, from feudalism to fascism to Facebook, has always depended on the same principle: keep people thinking alike, and they'll police themselves. You don't need secret police when people will snitch on their own thoughts. You just need fear of standing out. So, welcome to the Logic of Freedom, your field manual for escaping the mental plantation. We'll talk about why crowds go insane, why logic sounds offensive now, and how to build a mind so disciplined it can't be manipulated, even by the smartest con artists in history, marketers, politicians, and moral crusaders with a Wi-Fi connection. If that makes you uncomfortable, perfect. That's how freedom begins. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of the Crowd: How Sanity Becomes Unpopular. People love to believe they're independent thinkers. That's adorable. The truth? Most free thinkers are just repeating a different script, wearing a slightly cooler hat. The crowd has layers: influencers at the top, echo chambers in the middle, and blind followers at the bottom, all convinced they're the ones thinking critically. Crowds aren't evil. They're efficient. They allow people to outsource decision-making, morality, opinions, even taste, to the collective. It's easier to copy than to question. And in a world addicted to speed, questioning feels like treason. The herd's operating system. The crowd runs on emotion, not evidence. Fear spreads faster than fact. Outrage outperforms nuance, and moral certainty gets more clicks than intellectual humility. Crowds don't analyze, they amplify. They don't verify, they vilify. And once the mob locks onto a target, logic has the lifespan of a housefly. Case study: social media. Twitter, X, has turned into a global panic attack with emojis. Every day the herd decides what's morally unforgivable, then forgets by dinner time. It's not communication, it's catharsis for people who confuse outrage with purpose. Crowds need enemies. Without them, they get bored. The science of belonging. Humans evolved to stick together because tigers used to eat loners. Now the tigers are memes, peer pressure, and online mobs, but the instinct is the same. Don't get eaten alive by disapproval. That's why the smartest people in the room often stay quiet. Logic is dangerous when the room runs on feelings. In ancient tribes, you got exiled for questioning the chief. Today, you get ratioed. Belonging feels good because it relieves you from the burden of thinking. You get to borrow certainty and call it morality. You can outsource courage, outsource outrage, and even outsource identity. It's like leasing your brain with a zero down payment plan. The collective high. Nothing feels better than moral unity, especially when it requires zero effort. Marching with the crowd gives the illusion of righteousness. The chants do the thinking, the slogans do the ethics, and the dopamine does the rest. That's why collective movements so often begin with ideals and end with hysteria. History isn't short on examples. the Crusades, the Cultural Revolution, Twitter's daily apocalypse. Each started with good intentions and ended with bonfires of logic. The sanity paradox. Here's the tragicomic twist. Sanity sounds insane to the crowd. Try saying something obvious like, maybe both sides are wrong, and watch people combust like you insulted their ancestors. In the crowd's mind, neutrality is treason, moderation is weakness, and complexity is elitism. So the few who still think, really think, end up as the new heretics, canceled, mocked, or politely ignored until someone steals their ideas later. That's the price of logic in an emotional economy. But here's the good news. Crowds can't sustain attention. The same mob that burns you on Monday will quote you on Friday if the algorithm tells them to. And that's the loophole thinkers can exploit, outlast their hysteria. Escaping the crowd. Step 1. Stop needing agreement. Freedom begins the moment you stop caring if people understand you. Step 2. Question everything, including yourself. The crowd loves certainty. Thinkers love evidence. If you can't prove your beliefs wrong, you don't own them. They own you. Step 3. Stay amused. The crowd thrives on seriousness. Humor is kryptonite to moral panic. Laughing at hysteria isn't cruelty, it's clarity. In short, the crowd's logic is contagious, but so is freedom. One spreads through fear, the other through courage, and the cure for conformity isn't rebellion, it's reason. Welcome to the first dose. Chapter 2. The fear of standing alone. Why courage went out of fashion. Standing alone used to mean leadership. Now it just means you're not aligned with the community. The modern world has rebranded conformity as compassion and obedience as open-mindedness. We don't burn heretics anymore. We just unfollow them, dox them, and write think pieces about their problematic energy. It's progress, with better Wi-Fi. But make no mistake, the fear of standing alone is the most efficient control mechanism ever invented. You don't need guards if everyone's terrified of social exile. And so we've built the softest prison imaginable. One made of approval. The loneliness reflex. Humans are pack animals with Wi-Fi and credit scores. Our brains were designed to avoid isolation at all costs, back when isolation meant freezing to death or getting eaten by something with claws. That same survival wiring now makes you panic when your post gets fewer likes than usual. Evolution hasn't caught up with Instagram. Our fear of rejection isn't rational, it's biochemical. When the tribe frowns, your brain fires the same circuits it would if you'd been physically attacked. That's why losing friends over opinions hurts like a breakup. Because neurologically, it is one. You're not crazy. You're just running Pleistocene software on a 5G network. The new heresy, thinking in private. In ancient times, heresy meant questioning the gods. Today, it means questioning narrative. You can believe in aliens, crystals, or 12 different genders. That's fine. But question the sacred consensus of your social group? Now you've crossed a line. Modern culture doesn't demand faith in God. It demands faith in the crowd. And if you dare to think in private, you're accused of hiding problematic beliefs. Privacy is now suspicious. Thinking silently is subversive. Welcome to the surveillance of virtue, the epidemic of polite cowardice. Let's be honest, most people don't lie out of malice. They lie out of fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being fired, fear of being the only adult in a room full of toddlers with opinions. They call it professionalism or diplomacy, but it's usually cowardice with a resume. We've built a society where honesty feels like aggression. People no longer say what they think. They say what won't get them reported. That's why so many workplaces feel like hostage negotiations wrapped in HR slogans. The result? The loudest voices win, not the wisest, and the smartest people self-censor until they forget what courage even sounds like. The neuroscience of spinelessness. When you disagree with your tribe, your amygdala lights up like a Christmas tree. Your body interprets it as danger. Adrenaline spikes, heart rate jumps, logic plummets. This is why confrontation feels terrifying. Not because you're weak, but because your biology thinks you're about to get clubbed and eaten. But here's the catch. That same surge is also what fuels courage. The physiological difference between fear and bravery isn't in the chemicals. It's in what you do with them. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that truth is more important than comfort. And that's why courage went out of fashion, because comfort became currency. The cult of consensus. In every age, the establishment disguises conformity as virtue. Yesterday it was religion. Today it's inclusivity, team spirit, or brand alignment. The words sound noble because they used to mean something, but now they're just corporate camouflage. Polite ways of saying, don't think too much or you'll ruin the vibe. We've replaced courage with collaboration, conviction with consensus, and principles with company values. Consensus feels safe, but history has a funny habit of proving it wrong. Every great reformer, inventor, or philosopher started as a nuisance to their peers. The difference between a visionary and a lunatic is timing, and usually a few decades of hindsight. The social media courtroom. Social media turned the fear of standing alone into a public spectacle. You no longer risk embarrassment in front of a few neighbors. You risk humiliation before millions. It's why so many people keep their thoughts buried under layers of emojis and passive-aggressive memes. The crowd doesn't want authenticity, it wants agreement. Speak your truth actually means speak our truth or else. Platforms that promise connection now enforce conformity at algorithmic speed. You're not talking to people. You're negotiating with their collective ego. And God forbid you use logic in a feelings forum. That's like bringing a chessboard to a knife fight. Comfort, the quiet killer of freedom. Every empire rots from the inside once comfort becomes the national religion. And ours has temples on every screen. Comfort makes people soft, and softness makes truth unbearable. It's easier to scroll, nod, and blend in than to risk isolation for integrity. The average modern citizen doesn't need censorship. They self-censor. Not because they're oppressed, but because they're addicted to belonging. Freedom requires friction. But we've been conditioned to equate discomfort with danger and disagreement with hate. The result? A civilization terrified of thinking out loud. Relearning solitude. Here's the secret every free mind eventually discovers. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's clarity. Alone is where your thoughts detox from the crowd's noise. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces you to meet your unfiltered self, the one that doesn't have hashtags or applause. But that's where courage grows. In the quiet spaces where you stop performing and start thinking. Every great leap in human progress came from someone who spent more time with their own thoughts than with approval ratings. Newton had the plague and an apple tree. Tesla had pigeons and insomnia. You have do not disturb mode, use it! The courage equation. Freedom equals truth divided by fear. That's the math. Courage doesn't come from chest-thumping slogans. It comes from quiet defiance. From the willingness to say, that doesn't make sense, even when you're outnumbered 10,000 to 1. It's easy to call yourself brave when the crowd agrees. It's harder when they're sharpening digital pitchforks. But logic has one advantage over emotion. It doesn't age. Mobs dissolve. Facts remain. Stand your ground long enough, and the mob eventually runs out of slogans. They always do. The irony of independence. The irony is that most people secretly admire those who stand alone. They'll mock you publicly, but envy you privately. Because independence exposes their dependence. It's easier to sneer at courage than to admit you've avoided it. And so, society creates rituals of ridicule to keep rebels in check. But every time someone refuses to bow, refuses to fake belief for comfort, the illusion cracks a little more. Freedom spreads that way. One uncomfortable conversation at a time. Becoming comfortable with discomfort. Here's your practical takeaway. Get comfortable being misunderstood. It's the price of owning your mind. The next time you feel that cold rush of fear before speaking an unpopular truth, smile. That's the sound of your brain growing a spine. You don't have to fight every battle, but you do have to refuse every leash. Because the moment you stop fearing isolation, manipulation stops working. In short, courage didn't vanish. It just went out of style, like flip phones and moral clarity. But trends come back, and the new rebellion isn't shouting louder, it's thinking longer. The crowd will call you arrogant, stubborn, difficult, or contrarian. Take it as a compliment. They only use those words for people they can't control. Chapter 3. The Math of Manipulation. Lies that add up. Numbers don't lie, but the people who quote them definitely do. Welcome to the age of data-driven deception, where every bad idea comes wrapped in a percentage and a pie chart. The modern con artist doesn't sell snake oil anymore. They sell studies. And the public, bless its trusting heart, believes that if you attach a decimal point to nonsense, it becomes science. The religion of numbers. We used to have priests interpreting scripture. Now we have pundits interpreting statistics. Both speak in languages the average person doesn't understand. Both promise salvation through belief. And both get cranky when you ask to see the original data. Studies show has become the new "Thus saith the Lord." It's the magic incantation that ends all debate. Ask too many questions and you'll be labeled a denier, a conspiracy theorist, or worse, someone who still thinks critically. The irony? Most studies that dominate the news aren't even read by the people quoting them. They're read by journalists who read the press release written by the PR firm that was paid by the company that sponsored the study. By the time it reaches the public, it's been laundered through so many layers of spin that it's not science anymore. It's storytelling with spreadsheets. The tyranny of averages. The favorite trick of the modern manipulator, averages. If Jeff Bezos walks into a bar, everyone in the room becomes a millionaire. On average. Averages hide inequality, distort causation, and flatten nuance until reality fits the narrative. Politicians love them because they make failure look like progress. Corporations love them because they make mediocrity look like growth. And the public loves them because they sound smart without requiring understanding. It's not math. It's math cosplay. The illusion of logic without the work. The 97% mirage. You've seen it before. 97% of experts agree. Oh, really? Which expert? How many were asked? What was the question? The 97% trick works because it taps into our tribal wiring. If everyone agrees, it must be true. It's the numerical version of peer pressure. The implication is clear. Disagree, and you're one of the stupid 3%. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Consensus isn't a scientific argument. It's a social one. Science doesn't advance through agreement. It advances through annoying people who are wrong. The poll trick. Polls are the emotional cousin of statistics, numbers with just enough lipstick to look objective. Every election, every trend, every panic comes gift-wrapped in percentages designed to manipulate emotion. 68% of Americans believe. Great. But did you ask 10 people in a Starbucks? Or 10,000 across the country? Pollsters design questions to get predictable answers. Then media outlets cherry-pick the ones that make the audience feel validated. It's not about truth. It's about engagement. And nothing engages like outrage that looks mathematical. Data as theater. Remember when facts were boring? Now they're a performance art. News anchors deliver data dashboards with the same drama as game show hosts. Politicians quote statistics like magicians pulling rabbits out of Excel. The trick isn't accuracy, it's confidence. Say anything with a straight face, and half the population will repost it before lunch. We don't live in the information age. We live in the infotainment age, where data is a prop, not a pursuit. The illusion of precision. Humans love numbers because they feel clean, objective, truthy. 48.6% improvement, 1 in 73 chance. Statistically significant at P and LT, 0.05. These sound impressive because your brain confuses precision with honesty. But a number can be both precise and meaningless, like weighing a fog bank to the nearest gram. That's how you get phrases like statistically proven happiness and data-driven diversity. It's the same trick. Replace logic with language that sounds too technical to question. And it works beautifully because nothing silences doubt like jargon. The algorithm knows best. Once upon a time, humans manipulated data. Now, data manipulates humans. Algorithms track, analyze, and predict your behavior with terrifying accuracy, not to enlighten you, but to control you. Every click, scroll, and pause becomes a data point. The math doesn't serve you, it studies you. You're not the customer, you're the control group. That's the modern paradox. The freer the market, the more predictable the human. Every recommended for you is a polite way of saying, we know what you'll do next. The consensus machine. The danger of mass data isn't misinformation, it's homogenization. When everyone consumes the same metrics, the same facts, and the same interpretations, individuality collapses. Numbers become the new scripture, and dissent becomes sacrilege. That's why every major institution now preaches trust the data. It's the secular version of trust the clergy. Data isn't evil, but blind faith in it is. Because the moment you stop questioning the math, you stop being human and start being a statistic. The psychology of statistical seduction. Here's why it works. Numbers trigger cognitive laziness. When you see a percentage, your brain assumes someone smarter already did the thinking. You stop questioning. You outsource reasoning. This is what marketers and politicians understand perfectly. The brain craves certainty, and numbers feel like certainty without the messy burden of context. It's a mental shortcut, and every manipulator knows it. That's why ads scream clinically proven without mentioning who ran the clinic. Why media says experts warn without defining experts. And why politicians cite independent studies that turn out to be written by their intern. The great graph con charts are emotional weapons. Tilt an axis, change the color scale, exaggerate the range. Boom, instant panic or euphoria. It's why every economic downturn looks like the apocalypse and every recovery looks like a miracle. A single visual tweak can change public perception more than 1,000 words ever could. Because the average viewer doesn't analyze. They glance, feel, and share. Data visualization is the art of lying with geometry. When correlation becomes religion. Correlation causation. We know this. We forget it every election cycle. If ice cream sales rise with shark attacks, it's not because sharks like dessert. But watch any news cycle long enough and you'll see this exact logic weaponized daily. They'll tell you screen time causes depression, or that drinking coffee adds 5 years to your life, or that wearing red socks boosts confidence. All technically correlated, all statistically useless. But in a world addicted to simple stories, correlation is close enough to faith. The propaganda of percentages. The new propaganda doesn't scream. It graphs. It doesn't burn books. It buries them under data summaries. Modern censorship isn't about hiding information, it's about drowning it. Flood the feed with so many stats, so many conflicting charts, that nobody knows what's real anymore. Confusion replaces conviction. When everyone has data, no one has truth. That's how you pacify a population without ever silencing it. Give them too much information and no logic to navigate it. How to think mathematically without being manipulated, ask who benefits. Every number has a sponsor. Find them. Follow the question, not the conclusion. Data doesn't lie. But the question might beware round number. Anything ending in 0% or 100% belongs in a fairy tale. Corroborate. Don't calculate. If it's true, it'll hold up across sources. Remember, logic beats statistics. A good argument requires reasoning, not ratios. The paradox of modern rationality. We thought data would make us smarter. It made us easier to fool. Because information doesn't create wisdom. Attention does. And ours has been sold to the highest bidder. The manipulators don't need you to believe the wrong thing. They just need you to be too distracted, too confused, and too entertained to think for yourself. The takeaway. Don't worship numbers. Use them. Don't trust the data, understand its limits. And never let someone wave a graph at you like a magic wand. Freedom isn't found in rejecting math. It's found in refusing to mistake math for meaning. Because at the end of the day, logic doesn't need a spreadsheet. It just needs a spine.